نكون على رأس تجربة مماثلة لتجربة العراق.
Good afternoon and thank you for joining us on Future TV. I'm Linda Tamim and these are today's top stories. Clashes between the Lebanese army and Islamists continue in Tripoli, with the army storming a major militant stronghold this morning. Jabhat al-Nusra postpones the execution of Lebanese soldier Ali Bazal after mediation by a cleric from Arsal. And Israel approves 1,000 new settler homes in occupied East Jerusalem, in a move the Palestinian party Fatah warns will trigger an explosion. The clashes in Tripoli continue on their fourth day, with the Lebanese commando forces storming a mosque and seizing the headquarters of an Islamist commander. Yumna Naufal has the details.
Lebanese commando forces, backed by helicopter gunships, seized the headquarters of an Islamist militant commander on the fourth day of clashes that have rocked Lebanon's second largest city of Tripoli, leaving 42 people killed and some 100 wounded. A military source confirmed that the Abdullah bin Masoud Mosque, the stronghold manned by Shadi Maulawi and his partner Osama Mansour, militant commanders reportedly linked to the Al-Qaeda affiliate the Nusra Front, had fallen into the hands of the Lebanese army. The 4 days of running street battles between Lebanese troops and militants in Tripoli and northern district of Minya represent the worst bout of Syria-related violence since ISIS and the Nusra Front briefly overran the northeastern border town of Arsal in August, leaving 19 troops dead and dozens of militants as well. Meanwhile, the Nusra Front threatened to execute Ali Bazal, one of the 27 Lebanese servicemen being held captive by the Islamist militants, at 5 a.m. this morning, after accusing the Lebanese army of cheating to gain time and failing to meet its demand to end the offensive in Tripoli. No news of his fate has emerged hours after the deadline passed. In a statement posted on a Twitter account, the Nusra Front said it listed the name of captive George Khouri on the hit list as a means of pressure to avoid a further deterioration of the internal situation. The army has deployed heavily in the Bibit Tabeni neighborhood, meanwhile, in the northern coastal city of Tripoli, and detained a number of militants who have engaged in deadly battles with the military since Friday. The army denied in its statement carrying out any settlement with the armed groups, accusing some politicians who were harmed by the army's success to eradicate those groups of exploiting the matter politically. Justice Minister Ashraf Rifi was one of the political figures who voiced staunch support for the Lebanese army, and he said the army's action in North Lebanon weren't against the Sunnis. Rather, Rifi said he believes Hezbollah was trying to exploit the security situation to stir sectarian strife. Rifi said many Sunnis had been targeted because they stood with the state, mentioning late Prime Minister Rafiq Hariri and late Mufti Hassan Khalid. Rifi also called on residents of North Lebanon to put their trust in the future movement. Tripoli MPs and local officials called for an immediate ceasefire to the fighting and held a meeting to reach that end, which was attended by Rifi. Akkar's Mufti, however, criticized the military offensive and called on it to reconsider its campaign and the use of force in its battle against Tripoli's jihadists, while pleading with extremists to stop attacking the army.
Prime Minister Tamam Slam has spoken in support of the army campaign against Islamist militants, saying the military must press ahead with the raids. On the fourth day of fighting in Tripoli, Salam stressed the need for the army to continue its confrontation with outlaws, regardless of their religious affiliations. The Prime Minister also said the authorities are paying special attention to the humanitarian situation arising from the street battles, and that he has asked the relevant ministries and the Higher Relief Committee to compensate the people of Tripoli for the damage and cater to their needs. Salam spoke during a security meeting at the Grand Sarai this morning, attended by the Defense, Interior and Justice Ministers, as well as heads of several security institutions, including Army Commander General Jean Ahwaji. After the meeting, Salam left to attend a conference on the Syrian refugee crisis in Berlin. The Nusra Front has delayed the execution of a captive Lebanese soldier for the third time after mediation by Arsal-based cleric Sheikh Mustafa Hujairi. Hujairi, also known as Abu Taqiyya, traveled to Syria's border region of Qalamun yesterday night to urge the captors to spare the life of Ali Bazal, one of the 27 soldiers and policemen held hostage by ISIL. Hujairi allegedly succeeded in convincing the militants to postpone their decision to execute Bazal. The captors had threatened earlier to execute him at 5 a.m. this morning after accusing the Lebanese army of failing to meet their demand to end the offensive against jihadists in Tripoli. Hujeri, who has been involved in earlier negotiations to secure the release of the captives, was indicted, and an arrest warrant was issued against him earlier this month on charges of having links with Jabhat al-Nusra and other terrorist groups. A number of foreign men riding a black Grand Cherokee opened fire at the Murtada Hospital in Duris, situated in southwestern Baalbek, after being called by a patient at the hospital. The patient, a member of the Zaiter family, was drawn into a verbal dispute with a surgeon after the doctor insisted he will need to shave his stomach hair before performing surgery on his kidney, and the situation escalated when he called his friends. The attack caused some material damage to the second floor of the hospital, but no casualties were reported. Unknown assailants have tossed a hand grenade toward the Lebanese army position near Sidon, but no casualties were reported. The grenade was thrown from the Palestinian refugee camp of Ain al-Helwe towards the Villat neighborhood in southern city. A statement from the Joint Palestinian Security Force in Ain al-Helwe said the Palestinian factions are supporting the Lebanese military against Islamist militants and that they will fight anyone who tries to attack the army from inside the camp. Meanwhile, the army has been intensifying their search for fugitive Salafist preacher Ahmed al-Asir, who escaped prosecution after his supporters clashed with the army in the summer of 2013. Kurdish forces have reportedly thwarted a new attempt by ISIL fighters to cut off the Syrian town of Kobani from the border with Turkey before Iraqi Kurdish reinforcements arrive. The Syrian Observatory for Human Rights said Sunday's pre-dawn assault marked the fourth straight day of ISIL had attacked the Syrian side of the border crossing as the Iraqi Kurdish Peshmerga fighters prepared to head for Kobani. Kurdish forces backed by U.S.-led airstrikes have been holding out 4 weeks against an ISIL offensive around Kobani, which has become a high-profile symbol of efforts to stop the fighters' advance. Islamist militants from Jabhat al-Nusra have opened up a new front in regime-held Idlib, storming the government building in a city in northern Syria. Idlib has been under the control of the Syrian regime for more than a year after it was retaken by Bashar al-Assad's forces in 2012, after briefly being held by the Free Syrian Army. Syrian state television said the Nusra Front militants infiltrated Idlib at dawn, where they were confronted by troops and pro-government militias. Nusra militants said on social media that their forces cut the supply route to Idlib city, seized the governorate building as well as 2 tanks, and captured 12 soldiers. And coming up next, Brazilian President Dilma Rousseff wins a narrow re-election. Stay with us. Welcome back. Tunisians have elected a new parliament, bringing full democracy within the reach. After almost 4 years after an uprising cast out autocrat Zine El Abidine Ben Ali, official results were not expected until after Sunday, but moderate Islamist party Ennahda and rival secular alliance Nidat Tunis are favored to win most seats in only the second free election in Tunisia since Ben Ali fled into exile. Nidat Tunis won 83 seats, while the Islamist Ennahda party, which had dominated the North African country's politics since the revolution, came second with 68 seats, according to official provisional results released today. However, Ennahda urged parties to wait until official announcements, while Nidat Tunis suggested it had indications it was ahead, but gave no details. The Israeli government has given the green light for more than 1,000 new Jewish settler homes in occupied East Jerusalem. An official from Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu's office revealed plans to build roughly 400 in Har Homa and about 600 in Ramat Shlomo. The official did not elaborate further and declined to comment on the likely political and diplomatic impact of such a move at a time when the latest settler moves in the East Jerusalem neighborhood of Silwan have already sparked nightly clashes for months. The move has also sparked reactions regionally and internationally, with Jordan warning Israel that their peace treaty will be threatened by continued Jewish settlement buildings on occupied land, and a spokesperson from the Palestinian Authority's Fatah faction warning that such a move would lead to an explosion. Ukrainian President Petro Poroshenko says he will begin coalition negotiations after polls indicate his party and their allies as the biggest winners of the election. The Ukrainian president said he will start talks on forging a coalition in parliament next week, after exit polls showed a huge win to pro-Western forces in what has been labeled the completion of a historic shift away from Russia's sphere of influence. The Central Election Commission is expected to announce the preliminary election results tomorrow. And now for some news around the world in brief. Brazilian President Dilma Rousseff has won a narrow re-election. The leftist Workers' Party won the election mostly due to the party's strong record in poverty reduction. Rousseff vowed to continue fighting poverty in the South American nation by maintaining social projects and strengthen its stumbling economy. She also promised to work with the Congress to seek political reforms after massive demonstrations the past 2 years. Lava flows from the Kilauea volcano on Hawaii's Big Island is creeping through forest towards homes, where residents have received notices to be ready to evacuate their homes at any point. About 4,000 people overall live in the residential communities that the lava is approaching. The flow's leading edge is almost 40 meters wide, large enough to destroy homes in its path. South Africa's football captain Senzo Meyiwa has been shot dead by armed men in a town near Johannesburg. As the crime and murder rates in the African country are soaring, police say Orlando Pirates goalkeeper was shot after 2 men stormed into a house in Vosloorus, which Meyiwa was visiting yesterday evening. Other people in the house were unharmed. Local media said the assailants had demanded a mobile phone. Australia has suspended migration from Ebola-hit West African nations to try to prevent the virus from crossing its borders, as a teenager who arrived from Guinea tested negative for the disease. Immigration Minister Scott Morrison told Parliament that the government had stopped issuing visas to people from those countries hit by the disease, which has killed close to 5,000 lives in its worst outbreak, with over 10,000 cases. Several people arriving from West African countries have been tested, but no cases of the deadly disease have been found. Shakira is partnering with Fisher-Price to launch a line of baby toys as well as web series for moms. The Mattel Incorporated-owned company announced that the First Steps collection of toys and baby gear will be available in November. Shakira co-developed 6 products, including a bouncer that plays music, alphabet blocks, and a musical soccer ball, a nod to her soccer-playing boyfriend Gerard Piqué. All of the proceeds will benefit her Barefoot Foundation, which provides education and nutrition to children in impoverished areas of her native Colombia.
I'm so thrilled to be working with Fisher-Price. They are the most respected and #1 toy manufacturer in the world. It's been so fun to work on helping design this line of toys. One of the things that I've liked the most about working with them was to know that they have a group of ECD, early childhood development specialists on staff, and that they conduct months and months of tests and research and supervised play. It's so important, this part, to me, and to know that they produce the best and the most innovative toys possible.
This marks the end of our bulletin for today. Now for a reminder of our top stories. Clashes between the Lebanese army and Islamists continue in Tripoli, with the army storming a major militant stronghold this morning. Jabhat al-Nusra postpones the execution of Lebanese soldier Ali Bazal after mediation by cleric from Aysal. And Israel approves 1,000 new settler homes in occupied East Jerusalem in a move the Palestinian party Fatah warns will trigger an explosion. Those are your top stories for today. I'm Linda Tamim, wishing you all a very nice evening.
عم نتشاور وإن شاء الله الأمور عم تتيسر باتجاه
لن نكون على رأس تجربة مماثلة لتجربة العراق.